It's the TribLIVE Radio Morning Sports Report brought to you by Invisible Fence brand. Ken Laird, Guy Junker back from New York, where Guy correctly predicted Armageddon 2-1 again, and Rangers in 5. So no surprises in this series, eh, Guy?
Went exactly the way I thought it would, and I'm not happy about that, but it did.
When you look to cleaning out locker day yesterday over at Consol Energy Center into the future this week, they've already said everybody's status quo. Surprised at all they would come out that quickly and.
No, not if that's what they think they're going to do. But, you know, they have their goodbye dinner, and then everybody cleans out their locker, and everything's great. No, I wasn't hurt. My injuries aren't bad, or we could have done this and shit. A little bit too easy just to dust it off and throw it away that way. I'm not saying guys should have been throwing stuff anymore the day afterwards, but yeah, there's a lot left on the table there, and I'm going to be very anxious to see, one, Crosby's going to the World Championships. I want to see how he performs there. I want to see if Malkin does go. First of all, I think that'll tell you a lot, and secondly, see how he performs when he goes there as well. You know, I've often wondered, even guys that have been in the league a while, does the Stanley Cup playoffs bring out the same kind of passion and care from European players who Olympics and World Championships have always been more important to them? After you're in the league a while, does the Stanley Cup become as important to them as it is to Canadians and Americans? I'm not sure.
Well, I thought the Malkin's presser, too, one thing he mentioned, he was asked about Mike Johnston. He liked that he came to Russia to see him last year, but he mentioned in Johnston he thought stayed positive through the whole stretch, which, okay, but this team lost 15 of their last 20, if you include playoffs. They scored 34 goals in 20 games. Maybe he's a little too positive. What you're saying is there's just a little bit too much of, I don't want to say it's the country club atmosphere.
Too accepting of the collapse and the situation they're in. I think that's perfectly true. Now, does a first-year coach playing with guys who have won the Stanley Cup already, or coaching guys that have won the Stanley Cup, kind of have to be that way? I mean, I'm not sure that, you know, it takes maybe you needed a more veteran. We all know that coaching hire didn't go as well as they thought it would, or we're not even convinced that he's their number one choice for that job. But would a more experienced guy that's either won a Stanley Cup or been around long enough to command a little more respect, he may know deep down inside that if he yells and screams that they're not going to pay attention to it. So he might as well be that way. I'm glad to hear, though, that it seems like they support him. And I mentioned it last week. I've not heard one grumbling from a player, sometimes off the record, or guys will roll their eyes when they're, not on the air when you ask them about something. I haven't heard any of that. So because he's easy to work for. Maybe. For good or for wrong. I mean, I'm not blaming it all on Mike Johnston. Bausma was supposedly pretty easy to play for, too, and there were grumblings about him last year. But that's true. Maybe if Johnston were here for 5 years, some of the bloom would come off of that rose as well. I just think the whole general atmosphere yesterday was a little too positive and too easy to just push aside. Everybody's coming back. Everybody's healthy. Everybody wants to stay here. I want to finish my career in Pittsburgh. I want to play here again. I love this city. Well, you know what? We like the hockey to last beyond the end of April, too. Johnston did finally himself admit they fell off a cliff. So finally, acceptance instead of we were close, we played a really good series, we were outplaying them for 2/3 of the game, all that crap. And the fact that he did say too that he wasn't happy with the way they played down the stretch. He wants to rewatch all those games. And I think the one thing is, Ken, the thing that really from a hockey X's and O's standpoint you have to look at, they did get a lot more conservative down the stretch and cut their goals against way down. Is that the only way they could play with the injuries they had, or does that turn out to be a tactical mistake, and is that the reason that they stopped scoring goals? Should they still have played the same way and hoped that they could win the way they did earlier with different bodies in there? They probably wouldn't have. I mean, if they didn't play the way they did against the Rangers, who's to say if Crystal Tang doesn't play against the Rangers that they lose in 5 games, but the scores are 5-3 instead? That the Penguins create more offense because Letang's in there, but he's been good for penalties and mistakes in the past too that haven't helped. So I guess in general, I expect some changes to be made. If they're not going to be made at the top level of management, teams that change coaches and general managers frequently in all sports usually are failed to doom. Give these guys another year, okay? But the whole general atmosphere yesterday was way too complacent for what had happened for my taste. Well, they'll get a long summer. Maybe they're excited about getting the golf clubs out, as we all are. Invisible Fence brand brings the TribLIVE Radio Morning Sports Report to you.